How's it going, everyone? Session here. Welcome to a Final Fantasy XIV drama video. Wee woo, wee woo. Sound the alarm. Wee woo. What you're currently looking at right now is essentially a post made in, I'm assuming, Japanese text, and it's pretty much covering that there are several Google Docs and data being used in order to expose a very wide number of cheaters that we have in 14 as of like literally today. This is specifically developers that have created a specific plugin for PvP Frontlines released a list of every user that actually uses that program. And it turns out that the majority of those players are also in JP servers. However, the thing that's also in question can be used outside of PvP, such as Savage, Trials, Dungeons, and Raids, and Ultimates as well. And here's the problem. PvP only consists of 33% of the users that are currently using whatever the thing is that people are using in this today. And right now, there's a bit of a search party, if you will, for those users because everyone's names, as you can clearly see in this picture, there's literal names being listed, the server that they're on, and everything, and how many uses of the thing, and pretty much are already in the midst of like changing names. So, like, good luck if you try and find these people, but you probably won't do this actually. So like what, this is like the third time that they've gotten caught with something stupid. First off, on JP side, they got hit with the top thing, which is annoying. And then there was Fru, which is bad. And then we have PvP Frontlines. But again, 33% of players, PvP Frontline, over there on the JP side, use whatever the thing is that they're talking about here. And here's the thing, 33% of total players that use this thing are using it in PvP specifically. And the number is somewhere in there, and I'm not going to really disclose it entirely, but the total number that was listed was something around like 6,000 players. 6,000 players use whatever this plug is for PvP specifically. It doesn't account for the other 66%, which means that in total of closer to 20,000 players, or 18,000 ish, something of that nature, use this thing for non PvP content in the game. So about 12-ish thousand players. It doesn't actually immediately indicate, as far as I checked, in terms of who uses what, but those players are using this thing for content in the game. And doing like a quick little like dive into it, at least what I'm saying is like at least 100 players or so in JP at least are using this for non-PvP content. And then there's probably like a handful of players and AAU, because like why would we ever exclude them for the situation too? Of course they are. And I believe from what I was looking at too, there's like a lot of Chinese players that are playing this game also for the exact same reason. So it just kind of, you know, it's just kind of bizarre. And here's the thing too, over in China, they get this stuff way later than us, and they have our strategies, all the information that we've actually amassed over the course of time, because like YouTube is a universal platform. We already have guides and I think ideas and methods to completing content already like ruled out. So the fact that, you know, they're over there using this stuff to kind of let the handle fly on some plugin nonsense is insane to me actually. Because like if you don't know, Fru was recently cleared. The Futures Rewritten Ultimate was recently cleared without healers, as like a statement yet again to give healers like a bit of a, oh, like, you know, do something more than just mechanical healing, and like actually do stuff whatever that's like unique to healers and give them like a job to do sort of thing. Which like I won't discredit the idea. I think that healers could use a little bit more something. I think the last time we actually like effectively had like a necessity of having healers do stuff where nobody else could do it, I want to say was like Shinryu, maybe. I could be wrong. There might be like a fight in between then and now where like healers were like a requirement, but the one that immediately comes into my mind is Shinryu. To give you an example, the dragon heads that come down, they target 4 players. They need to be healed by a healer in order for them to kind of like fly away, and then they don't like one shot whoever the person is. That's the mechanic that I thought in my mind. But anyways, so Fru was recently cleared without healers, quote unquote, but they were cleared without green healers. That doesn't mean that they weren't clear without healers in any way, shape, and form. 9 times out of 10, most likely the case scenario that boiled down to was that they included, they just replaced the healers with tanks. And then you probably had like, you know, I don't know, maybe like 2 paladins and then like 2 other tanks to kind of compensate. So like it doesn't technically count. Additionally, no one's going to go into Party Finder and do Futures Ultimate without healers. That's just not how that works. It didn't happen with the dungeon. It doesn't happen with top. Like, no one cares. So like, don't get annoyed if healers are not being used in the ultimate. It's just annoying to think about that they tried to make a fix for it and it didn't work. So now they gotta be even more harsh. But let's kind of come back to the topic of hand. Not to mention, the documentation that's listed here only allocates the player count that are using the specific plugin that is mentioned in this thing. So out of the 18,000 players that are using this thing, that is a minimal. That doesn't imply that there's other ones that are not being used as well. Because, you know, there's other ones like the camera one or whatever, and then like the one that shows all the AoEs, like all these other stupid friggin' things that appear. Everyone is to some degree using this at a minimalistic degree. So there's at least 18,000 players that use this one. It doesn't account for the other possible dozens or hundreds that exist. So just bear that in mind. And I don't know what the total raid count is in terms of players that do like strictly ultimate or like even savage to some degree, but I almost want to say that like close to 200,000 players probably tackle the tier list in full from start to finish, and I would say maybe closer to like 300 to 400,000 maybe tackle like at least the first fight in Savage raids, but then take the 200,000 that actually complete the Savage tier and go into the ultimate. I think you can cut that number almost by half. So if you cut that number by half, and take the percentage account into place, I would say like 10% of players that do ultimate content, even if it's like an old one, a current one, or all of them, at least 10% of players are using at least something that's in here, which again is completely insane and unacceptable behavior. And I'm dumbfounded by it. I play strictly vanilla in this game as much as I possibly can, even though I'm getting exposed to this world slowly and surely, and it's starting to actually frustrate me because my history of this game, I played this game originally on PlayStation 3 and stayed on a PlayStation until like mid Shadowbringers, I want to say, and like 14 is my first MMO, so I didn't even know that any of this existed until literally like I want to say a month or two like before Dawn Trail. And even still, I just don't find any a necessity to use any of this stuff. I'm sure there's like something that might be like, you know, accessibility for like disability in mind. I'm sure there's something that's actually on a positive side for downloading some of this stuff, but not when it like indicatively is for cheating. When like, you know, like if someone is colorblind, for example, and there's like an indicator that may tell you like, oh hey, like, you know, this is helpful because like you're colorblind, then like sure. I don't think that 14 has like the best accessibility, but they kind of have like a weird situation with it anyways, because some of that stuff needs to be used to mechanically figure out how to execute the thing. And after talking to some friends who've actually explained to me which ones that they use to kind of help them figure it out, like I get it, you know. I have a friend who's very much like super blind in every way, shape, and form, but like it's not that they use like a thing to help them visually see better. They just use like an auditorial thing, which I get. Like okay, like sure, but that auditorial thing would kill it for me if as a player, because it literally tells me what to do and where to go and what's happening when I don't necessarily want to like use that per se, you know. So sometimes if you use something like that and it helps you at least enjoy the game a little bit better as like a quality of life, then it's understandable why you would use it. But to deliberately, like, from what I understood, you hands off, like you just sit here like this and it does everything for you. That to me is insane, because what's the point of not playing the video game if you don't want to pick up the controller or the keyboard and mouse to actually like play the video game? You know what I mean? So to me, that's kind of like insane. And this hasn't even like strung up over here on the NA side or EU side as far as I'm aware, because we just recently got the live letter and they just literally talked about the scope plugin, which was already taken down and hopefully stays down, because the fact that they made that in the first place for the reason that they did, if you don't know the context, it's insane behavior. Bruh, people had to really reconsider how they actually like go about making some of these things and not thinking about the maliciousness that could be used against it. Now here's what I would argue. Okay, like sometimes the game, going through it 40 times or doing a thing like a grind, sometimes it can be kind of tedious, like sure. But the game is literally designed for you to enjoy the content when it comes out, and then when it's done, you can go play something else. It's always how it's been. It's never ever changed. So then I wonder to myself, like, what are people using this crap for? You know what I mean? I think even more so too, like the content that's designed is made to be difficult in some formats, and they've actually watered the content down dramatically in comparison to what it used to be, and they don't like how watered down it is now, and so they're trying to bring it back up. And here's my thing too, because I've already completed all the content for the expansion so far, right? So for me personally, like I've already said my piece about how I felt about the current ultimate, and I just think that the more and more of this stuff that gets exposed by people because of just showcasing like either the lack of security or just the facilitation of the game in itself, I think that it's just time for the devs to start to ramp everything up and go back to like 900 power. You know what I mean? Like every content back in the day used to be insanely difficult. They're slowly, incrementally bringing that back into place, although they're having some hiccups in the process. But like it's okay. They're trying to find like a good balancing point. But the problem is that even those players that want to showcase like, oh yeah, like I did this content or that I can do this content, but like without my hands, check it out. It's like you don't even deserve it, right? So at that point in time, dude, just I would rather be punished and make something impossible that I can go in and go do and admit to myself that I can't do it until I realize that it's too difficult even for myself, than for someone to have the opportunity to do this with like their hands off the wheel. Because like this is just disgusting. You know what I mean? And like again, the thing is that like Yoshi P has already made it so clear. It's like, hey, if you don't talk about this stuff or like don't tell people about it, then like I won't come after you. But if you start doing this stuff, then I'm gonna start taking some measures into account. And I promise you that if there's anything that happens in this world that affects the game in total because of like the lack of brain that some people have when they play this game is going to be so bad, because it's not easy for Yoshi P to just like shut this game down, but I don't doubt that he would do it because people are messing around too much. You know what I mean? So that's why, like for me, I refuse to even like immerse myself in this because first off, it's against TOS, and I love this game like so much that I refuse to do anything to taint it. Um, and also like dude, this game is actually so good at what it does in a lot of formats, and I think that it's a very good idea to figure out ways to improve, whether for yourself or to provide feedback for the game to improve. But I think it's also a really big dishonest to take advantage of the game's like issues and or even your own and then apply it in the game as well, because like I said, I didn't never think about it beforehand, but as soon as I realized that certain people actually have used some kind of thing in my game, I don't even pretend to like ignore it. I just see myself out. I can give you a prime example. When the first time I went to well, not first time, but the third time I went to DSR to try to join like a group, we were unable to do the second trio because somebody couldn't figure out where the two eyes are for Thornton. And I was shocked by the thing that I watched them display on to like a Discord call, for example. I was like watching them prog because I wasn't progging at the time. I was kind of like hanging out and they were progging, but they were showing everyone their prog. And when I saw two giant green lines pointing at Thornton and the eye, I was like, what the heck is that? Oh, it's a thing? Cool, I'm out. Like I left the group that moment. I refused to stick with the group in that exact format. And so it's the thing is like you genuinely don't know who's using what or when or how or why until in some format they get exposed for it. And this is actually doing exactly that, right? It's exposing so many people that are responsible for using things like this and actually like exposing them for the fact that there's it's just not doing a good service to the game. You know what I mean? Now again, do I think that it's stupid that some things that they don't do correctly in their game is not working either? Like, don't get me wrong, yeah, sure. Like, we just got the Zero Glam outfit release for Dawntrail, and you can wear Zero's Glam, which I think is super cool. But yeah, did I go log into my Viera character and check if she can wear it and found that she couldn't? Yes. And then guess what? That kind of sucks. Now, here's the thing. If there was a way that somebody made like a thing to like allow it to be possible, and it's like, oh, you know what I mean? Then like I get it, right? Like it's just logical that certain things look and work a lot better in some formats, and it's a big question mark about like how can the devs not do this, and like I get that, But that's something that they got to figure out, hopefully sooner than later, even though it has been years. But this is something that they can never figure out because it's just not part of their like game design and structure. This is like actually exposing the game in a very negative light. So I just think that I'm gonna be really annoyed and disappointed when all of this is impossible to do anymore, right? Not because I want to be using it or anything, but it's because like the player base that is so obsessed with using this stuff eventually are going to want to find another place to bring this crap with them, right? Which for me would be better personally, but also I'm sure that there are some things that people might need and are able to benefit from with some stuff, like again like the disability or like accessibility things, and until the actual game incorporates it, then dude, like some players might just leave because they don't have the ability to play the game. You know what I mean? Uh and like take other examples into place too, because I'm in discords and in rooms of people having conversations and they're talking about things that I'm not familiar with. And one thing that I was very shocked by that at first I actually didn't like, that I just eventually accepted because like it made sense to me, was in the party listing, you couldn't see timers on people's buffs and debuffs and windows and whatnot. So I actually was going to refrain myself from turning that on. And then we did P10, and then I realized like, oh, mechanically I have to stare at the party list to figure out how to like execute the thing, which was kind of like paramount to actually doing the mechanics successfully. And then I just realized it too that I had to do the exact same thing in Fru. I had to look at the timer during UR to figure out, do I have 10, 20, or 30? And then what does my other person have with me if I have a 30 to figure out my adjustment, right? I've always needed to rely on that, but I used to do it more manual. So the quality of life of that is actually super nice. And I feel like some of this stuff is also incorporated by players like this, where they actually develop things that eventually become very helpful in the game, but it's illegal because it's not base kit into the game, but eventually does get base kit into the game, and then it actually ends up being like a benefit, right? So the whole thing I'm trying to say is like quality of life stuff is really cool to have, and if it exists again, and if you don't like immediately expose people for the malicious intent of it, then usually it's not that big of a deal, right? But when something is maliciously being done and the advantage for it is being taken way out of line, then you have yourself this situation where people are going to literally get exposed for deliberately hacking into the game and cheating in content that is supposed to be either designed for competition or for some kind of clout, right? Where you can clear an ultimate and be like, hey, I worked really hard to do this. And you only water down the content as a result, not only for the players who actually work hard to do it, but even the game in its entirety. And it kind of causes that disinterest from kicking into place as well. And like I said, we have so much content to look forward to in 7.2, and like this is like a small thing right now, but don't be surprised when the JP forums blow up with this, and then we get a live letter that's going to once again talk about how scuffed the PvP system is because these 6,000 people are cheating in a piece of content that's not even like the number one focus of the game in its entirety. You know what I mean? So it just really sucks to see that this thing blows up on Twitter and everyone's gonna be like, oh my god, like So I just really wish that that just wasn't the case scenario. And like I said before in the past, man, I went from being like a casual player to turning into like an ultimate enjoyer and savage raid enjoyer and content enjoyer, and I just really enjoy being able to prove to myself with like at least some form of honor and dignity that like dude, I want to be good in the game and be helpful, and it just sucks that people don't hold themselves accountable for that kind of thing in any way shape and form. And like dude, it's just like annoying because like you know how bad it is right now to go into party finder and try and do an ultimate and then assume that you can find 7 people that want to patiently work with you to prog and become better, or go into the fight and clear a raid and then like not own it to mistakes. People just don't do that, and it's honestly really frustrating. So it's even worse now to think about the idea that there are people that I've gone into content with and me be completely unknown to the idea that they're just cheating in my game, and then I'm thinking to myself like, yo, that person's like really good at the video game. But now it's hard to actually even put that into place because I want to hold people up high when they can do content, because maybe if I see them again, it's like, oh yeah, like I know that person, they're really good at the video game. But when things like this come out and get exposed for it, now I'm not even so sure anymore. So it's like, dude, if I was able to play this game in like a single player perspective, I totally would, because I would rather do that than to ever play with somebody who's hacking or cheating in a video game that like doesn't even require it. Like, it's honestly a skill issue if you need to use this to like win in a competitive or cooperative video game. Like, what are we doing? Listen, man, end of the day, like, take this stuff and just take it somewhere else. It's just so like lame to hear about. And also it's also bad that people always talk about the community of 14 and put it on like this pedestal, and then you find out that all this darkness is like lurking around in every corner in the community circle also, and find out that there's just no truth or honor to this game. So like, dude, so dumb. And like eventually they're gonna just take a stand. I think they're gonna just end up doing something about all this stuff. And I mean, partially I'm cool with them adding like an anti-cheat that just kind of removes a lot of this crap, or at least like at least minimize it to some degree where it's not anywhere near as bad as this. Because like I said, man, the amount of people that are out here doing what they're doing is just like, it's just hard to play the game honestly sometimes. And genuinely, I hope that this video goes widespread. I think it's actually more important to expose this as much as possible to people, so that you just know who to go after, because it's honestly unacceptable that there's people out there that decide to do this to video games and like ruin other people's experience, especially because everyone's got like a freaking ego. You know what I mean? So I mean, like I said, I really hope that this gets addressed in one way or another, and people decide to just, for me, it's simply put, if I had a character in JP servers, I would just make sure I blacklist every single one of these people. And hopefully when they fix that system, they make it more possible. And then if there's like a detection thing to figure it out too, they can just, get rid of the count. That'd be really cool, because I would gladly be part of like the elimination of anybody who's like out there deliberately using all this crap. You know what I mean? So there you go. Cheaters, man. They are, in fact, the worst, no matter where you find them.